Hey everybody, welcome back to the Deeply Graphic Design Cast. I'm Nick Longo, your host. I just came back from the week-long incredible opportunity of Adobe MAX this last week, and it was fantastic. I've been thinking about it the last few days and going through the whole experience over and over again. It was so much fun to be in LA. That made it a lot easier for me. Stayed local to the convention center all of last week. And it was a fantastic opportunity to meet so many people, both folks I know and only get to hang out with at events like this, and then plenty of new people. Met a few listeners from the podcast, folks that watch our Adobe Live show as well. So many great people. And I think, honestly, the whole reason these events and these meetups are still so successful and such an incredible thing to look forward to, it's really because of who you get to meet and chat and talk with. And man, did we talk. I think I lost my voice on night one. And thankfully, I survived that and had 4 talks this year at Adobe MAX talking about how you could tell your own story with your case study and your portfolio pieces that you put in your website. So had a good opportunity to meet a lot of folks that were in that zone that a lot of, I'm sure you guys are as well, of trying to find the right opportunities and the right way to sell yourself. And that's what I based my whole talk on. And we went through a whole process of building it in the lab and then talking about really incredible key points as far as how to present. And it was so cool. So many people had really great insight on how they do things. And I was taking notes along the way, every step I got. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see a lot of the sessions because I was so busy kind of doing my own and running around and doing some other stuff for the Adobe community team. And it was just a crazy, crazy few days. I really wish I could have seen a few of my friends, including Tyler Pate, the Lincoln Design guys. I heard all of them crush their incredible opportunities to get up there on stage and tell their story. So if you get a chance, I think on the Adobe MAX site, there are tons of content from recorded sessions there to go and look at. Maybe some of you guys watched it live while it was happening. But coming back from MAX, I've been thinking a lot about a few things. And one of them was this idea of like, what happens when you mix structure with spontaneity? And this year I went into MAX so prepared because I had more responsibilities than I've ever had. And as long as you're in any kind of situation where it might be a talk, it might be a pitch, it might be onboarding with a new client or whatever it is, maybe even building that brand to go and present. All of those things are where you rehearse and get your timing and your cadence and your sequence and everything else locked in. I found that like I went in super, super confident. I had spent months putting together all of this stuff. Thankfully, the team there, when I got the call to do this, it was around, I want to say June. Yeah, it was June when I was invited to come. And from that point on, we put together a ton of different options as what this talk would be. And then from that point on, there were almost weekly check-ins with the team to make sure you were putting the outline together. You were talking about the objective. What were your hopes with this conversation and this talk and all of those things? And I really got as locked in as I could. I think there was no way around it, right? You're more rehearsed. You're locking in all of your slides. You're making sure everything's great. But then I realized, fast forward to last week, and halfway through day one, I found that all that planning meant something totally interesting that I completely forgot about, and that was just reality. I used to think that the best part of all of this stuff, speaking in front of a bunch of people, doing a presentation, building a brand for your client, I used to think that the best part of those things was like the unpredictability, the rush of winging it. And I've had my fair share of winging it throughout school, throughout, many times. I'm like last minute Longo. I'll do things at the very last minute if I'm not held accountable. But this time I took the opposite approach. I built a blueprint and I rehearsed it. I refined it. I made sure that every detail had its place. I wanted to make sure I knew this inside and out. And what I discovered is something I didn't expect, that real magic happens between structure and the chaos of the actual event or when it's time to perform. So in this episode, I want to talk a little bit about that balance, what I call designing between the lines. Because creativity, whether you're presenting on stage or pitching to a client or just building your brand for a client, whatever it might be, we're all there, right? You're putting all your ducks in a row. It isn't about total control or total chaos. There's a unique balance kind of in between. It's about learning when to stick to that plan that you had and when to throw out everything out the window. So this part one is called the blueprint mindset. Here's the thing. Every creative, you have that moment and it starts with a plan, and that's not a bad thing. You know, structure has a bad rap in creativity and like the circles around it. I think like, you know, you talk about the spontaneity and the idea of brainstorming and all that stuff and how it shouldn't be structured. But the truth is, I think it's where it gives you the stability the best way possible. I know I need that. That's something I need to have, that master plan or this blueprint first before I try anything. I think it's my preferred way of doing anything. I'm not on the fly in any way, shape, or form unless I have that blueprint. And it's what lets you show up very calm, collective, and ready to perform. I was thinking about it the day before the first talk, and I wasn't the least bit nervous. I was anxious. I was like ready, and I wanted this thing to start. And I really was excited about that, you know, first second. And I'm almost like even at a point where I'm thinking, ooh, what's this going to be like? You know, you're just curious. You're here at that moment. So for me, that blueprint is everything that happens before you get in front of an audience or behind your screen or in front of a client. All of those things are what makes the creative chaos part actually manageable. So before Max, I was obsessed about getting it right. I built the deck weeks in advance. I mean, I think I had it done by the end of June, the beginning of July, and I rehearsed the transitions. I even like color coded the slides. I had little Easter eggs all over my slides to give me the prompts of what I should be talking about at that particular moment. That's one thing I've learned in teaching a lot, is like, let your slides be your best friend. I've created backup after backup after backup in 3 totally different folders, one on Box, one on Dropbox, one on Adobe Creative Cloud, one on my hard drive. I was just so meticulous about making sure there was going to be no technical issues at all. I even will admit it, I tried practicing some of the timing of jokes and some of the pauses and things like that, which, again, I think they just give you the confidence leading into them. Not that any of them worked in any way, because we'll talk about that later. But this might sound like a little bit of overkill. I get it. Like, there's some truth to this, though. That structure gave me so much confidence. It wasn't about memorizing lines. I'm not good at that in any way. I was thinking about how I wanted to create a solid foundation, and that foundation would allow me to get up there and walk and then be able to let go when needed. So if you think about it, preparation doesn't kill creativity. What it does is it actually like frees it. It allows you that opportunity to wing it and have some free chaos and do something on the fly because your foundation and your blueprint is so solid. So when you prepare, your brain isn't busy fighting off panic or trying to remember what's next. You're not performing on adrenaline, you're performing on instinct. And the times I have performed on adrenaline only, I'm sure the audience or whoever I was talking to probably saw the chaos just unfold right in front of them. Think about it too. It's like you're performing from instinct because you know the content or you know what you're talking about. And then you can be present and you can read the room in that moment to know when it's time to do a pivot. And honestly, that's something I've seen in every area of design. When I'm working on a brand project, say for clients like Little Billy's or the East Meets Young one that we just finished, the prep is everything. Like, we create frameworks, we put naming systems together, we have our brand pillars, we're building the mood boards at the very beginning, and all before we've ever touched design. I sometimes laugh in my class. I'm like, my students 2 to 3 days in, and we're working on all of these things, the brand pillars and the creative brief, and they're like, we haven't even designed yet. And it's like, of course, because I want to get the foundation right. That structure isn't meant to box us in. It's what allows us to explore freely later, because you're really in the zone with all of that foundation and everything that you've talked about. Think of it like a jazz musician. You learn the scales so you can break them. The prep is the discipline. The play is where your art lives. And again, you can't be successful at the chaos part unless you have learned everything that you're talking about or that you're planning to present like it's the back of your hand. And that's exactly how I felt there on that first day at Max. I walked in grounded. I was super calm. I was ready. My structure had my back. And I think that's how I looked at it. It's like usually, maybe you're with people that and that can help calm you down, or you're just nervous before meeting that client for the first time. So you do something unique to kind of calm yourself down. I found I didn't even have to do that. It was pretty cool to see that, like, the feeling again was not like stress, but it was anxiousness. I was just ready to go. But here's the twist. Even the cleanest blueprint can get smudged once you're in the thick of it. Because the second you walk on that stage, you realize that no matter how airtight your plan is, reality always adds its own layer. And it sure did on that first few minutes, because I had no idea what any of the surroundings or the environment was going to look like. You think about it when you're planning for it, but I had no idea. So of course you get there, and then it might be even just the office space that you are presenting at. It might be you going off to a client and you've never met. It's all those unknowns. That's where the things start to get really interesting, because that's where the breakpoints could truly come in. And I want to talk a little bit more about now what the breakpoint moments are, because this is the fun zone. This is the area that comes next. If you've got the blueprint down, this area is just your playground. This is where you get to explore. So the other side of this coin, the breakpoints, those moments are when the structure starts to crack and the unexpected could truly creep in here. And because no matter how dialed in your plan is, reality doesn't care. There is a technology hiccup. There's just what I found, I called it the energy shift. It's like, it could be really invigorating and positive, and something could shift in the energy of the room very quickly. And that's a unique little twist, a little curveball. People can surprise you. And if you can't read the room and pivot, you're stuck performing for a plan that's already dead. And like, if you can't make that pivot and you got to stay only on the track that you've practiced, yeah, you're dead in the water. So for me, the moment came early at Max. It was the second or third session. I can't remember which one it was. And it was an 8 a.m. session right after the big party. And, I had some coffee. I was kind of considerate of like what I ate that morning. I was just trying to make sure I was well awake before that. So I was probably awake at about 5 a.m. and had a cup of coffee, tried to use the gym in the hotel. Of course, it was horrible, so that didn't help. But the energy in the room was, let's just say, a little bit different than the last two, because the last two were like in the middle of the day. People had come from maybe another session. And again, like, you can't guarantee what that energy, even in a room, even on a Zoom call, is going to be with someone that you're presenting to. So at that point, I had this like perfectly rehearsed into ready to go, smooth transitions. I had visuals that were timed well. I had a few lines I was really proud of in the talk. And when those came around, those little moments gave me that kind of confidence to make sure I can kind of pivot and find something in there. And about 3 minutes in, I could tell it wasn't landing. So I was kind of going like, ooh, these little extra things I had, these things were not really working, and panicked just a little bit. And then you could feel it when it happens, because it's like if you tell a joke or you're saying something funny and it doesn't hit, the rhythm of the room just kind of can go flat. And you could see the glazed eyes, the folded arms, and maybe the phones lighted up in the back row. And I'm just standing there thinking, okay, Nick, your blueprints are not saving you. You might have to pivot here. So I paused and I took a breath, closed the slide deck for a second, and then started talking like I would to my class out over in CSUN. Just being honest and off the cuff. And I think it was perfect because I went to something that had happened the night prior, and it was good news. It was stuff that we were talking about, specific details that Adobe had released that other day. And it was a great way to kind of get them talking. And 2 or 3 of them instantly kind of, joined the conversation. And within minutes, the room shifted, the power shifted, the energy really felt great. And people leaned in. They started nodding, and a few laughed. And not just because of the slides, but because of the realness that had happened at that moment. And that's when it clicked for me that the blueprint had built the confidence to show up, but the breakpoint built the connection. Because if I didn't do that, I think it could have been just a flat line all the way through. That's the paradox of preparation. You plan everything only to realize that the most powerful moments are the ones that you cannot plan. And again, you can't pivot that way unless you know this information and you know what you're going in there. And I think that's the lesson for any creative is whether you're teaching or you're pitching or you're designing, at some point your structure has to give way to instinct. And you can't have that again without being prepared, knowledgeable, and a little bit flexible and open to go off that path. The best designers, the best speakers, the best presentation people, the best leaders I know, they all know how to do this. They have that skill, and they can sense when the plan stops working, and they don't panic. They just pivot. They adjust the tone. They adjust the energy. They might even kind of shift the pacing. I know for me, I'll have a tendency to maybe speak very fast, and that throws me completely off. No pivot in the world is going to save me there. So I had mentioned to somebody that I showed them I always bring like a Post-it note that just says, "Slow down, Nick." And I put it on anything I'm ever in front of when I'm talking. And that has helped me slow down to be more consistent and more on point with what I'm trying to say. And you can feel that when the moment needs it. And again, like slowing the pace for me is one of the best ways to, just like I'm doing right now, allow me to find the right words to convey exactly what I'm saying. And I won't mess up on a word or two because I have taken I've taken the time to really consider what I want to say. And that's not luck. That's pattern, and that's recognition. That's the emotional intelligence you have to still keep on while you're in situations like this. You develop it by showing up over and over and over again, enough times that you can feel when someone or something is off, and you trust yourself to fix it right on the fly. And if you do need some practice at this, again, the best thing to do is if you have no audience, do it to yourself, record yourself, get comfortable with this idea of being able to see what you do and how you can improve on it. Teaching has given me, I think, the best training ground to get to that point where I know exactly where to go, how to pivot, and what to pull from when that energy is off. So when you're in that kind of space, you stop being reactive and start being responsive. Responsive will truly get you to the next level with the confidence and the ease that you might have just made a really good pivot. You're not clinging to the structure in any way. You're dancing with it a little bit. You're seeing how it can move and be nimble. Let me make and give you another cool example. This one's from design, not the stage. During like the early developments of Little Billies, I had a pretty clear system mapped out. The mood boards, the logo, the direction, the color systems, everything polished, all aligned. And then halfway through, something felt a little bit wrong. Everything looked too clean, too intentional, and I didn't have that spark. So I scrapped a week's worth of some layouts that I had, sat down, And I just started sketching on paper again. And the results were the whole look really shifted towards something more mischievous, a little bit more nostalgic. Maybe I was being a little bit afraid to do that. And I was so far in the mix. And here I was, eyes to screen, digital, pixel, pixel, and not feeling like it was going well. My way was to stop, pivot, go back and sketch. And it ended up becoming the heart of the brand. And it was the mascot. It was once the mascot kind of came into play and the right one hit, everything just, the synergy was so cool. And that was my breakpoint moment. It was the same thing. It was like being a little bit off and seeing that something was wrong. How do I fix this? I had to abandon what I really considered was my safe route. That was the way that I was structured. I made plans and trust what my gut was telling me was this doesn't look like Little Billy's yet. It's quite not there. And so that's the same muscle that you flex when you're on stage or you decide to improvise at a presentation or that elevator pitch moment when you get to meet someone with some opportunity ahead, or when you're teaching and you realize that your students just aren't connecting, or when you're designing and realize that the concept needs a bit of a detour. It's instinct and it's wrapped in awareness, because you're not going to get to that unless you're fully aware that maybe this is just the wrong path. It's the wrong road. And you can't blueprint those moments. Like, you can build the foundation, and that's what lets you recognize when they're there and how they just showed up in front of you. And that's the key difference there. Structure isn't a cage, it's a launch pad. It doesn't have a ceiling. It doesn't have something that's keeping you in there. It is fully open and blue sky. So think of it as that moment that when it is dropping or not connecting, you can use it as a launch pad. You've got to know when to make that jump. Because if you never let yourself reach the break point, you never discover what you're truly capable of improvising. And that confidence is pretty great. I mean, that's a huge task to do. And again, if you are able to do it and you recognize the timing to pivot, your improvisation will truly be good. That mini takeaway is that blueprints keep you ready, but breakpoints keep you real. And I always want that. I don't want the prepared, perfect, like, cadence and script for anything I do. And so if you keep that in mind, it gives you that opportunity and it keeps you to be real. Like, that's all we want. I've learned that the hard way, because many times when I did presentations with sales reps in my old job, I was just trying to copy them a little bit. I wasn't really learning who I was and what my tone was and what my point of view was. You can build the best plan in the world. Your deck can be flawless. Your notes can be all airtight, and your visuals could be polished, because that's what we do. We know that part. But if you can't read the room, none of this matters. Creativity at its core is communication, and communication is never one way. So if you're ever in that zone where you are presenting to a client, to an audience, or whatever it might be, turning it into a discussion rather than a presentation, making it not a one-way conversation, will really lessen the fears and the butterflies as well, because that makes it a little bit more that we're reliant on both sides of this equation to make this event, this situation, successful. When you're teaching or presenting or pitching or having that onboarding call with someone, even collaborating with your client or a coworker, the ability to feel that energy in the room is everything. That's how you know when to push, when to pause, and when to switch lanes entirely. And I think, again, you get that confidence from knowing the work, but also identifying that moment. That awareness doesn't come from a manual or a book or even this conversation. It comes from showing up over and over again and learning to trust your gut. It took me so long to get to that point of trusting my gut, because anytime you're in a situation where that happens, I think years prior, I would think my gut's not experienced enough to know that this is the right moment, and I would just dismiss it. But I think later and later, through different opportunities, different experiences, I start to realize that that gut is telling you 100% exactly the right thing. At Max, after that early morning session where I had to pivot, I started noticing all these subtle signals I'd normally miss when I'm locked into a presentation mode. A person leaning forward, someone smiling at the slide or nodding their head when I brought up a new feature that will save you time and get you to your final destination of a project much faster. I noticed that those quiet moments that you could feel the attention sharpen. And then, of course, you can feel when it drifted. And I always want to make sure you're aware of both and you can identify the difference. It's like watching waves. If you think about it, the energy moves. And if you're tuned in, you could surf it instead of getting knocked over by it. It's the same idea. Like, how are you flowing with the energy around you? And honestly, this applies far beyond just public speaking. It's the same skill, and it shows up when you're leading a design project. If you're too focused on your screen or your mood boards or other items that you've prepped, you miss the signals that your team or a client is sending you. Their tone, their hesitations, the stuff that they don't say. And that's what I realized is like no one was saying anything, giving me these cues. It was all visual. It was all being able to observe and look. And that's where reading the room becomes one of the most powerful skills I think you could develop. Because when you can sense that energy, whether it's from one person or the whole group, you stop designing in isolation. You start creating in real time. And that's how it worked. It felt like a different flow of no longer just isolation, but it was this idea of like co-creating. What are we going to do from getting the signs that you gave? How am I going to switch? And that's in real time, and how that works is pretty cool. I've often been asked, like, how do you get better at that? And how do you learn to trust your instinct? And here's my answer, to be super honest. I think you have to earn it. It doesn't come naturally. Every time you put yourself out there and it's something fearful or something that you're afraid to take that step, walking into that room or to that meeting, whatever it is, if something doesn't go as planned, every time you adjust mid-flight and you survive it, your instincts will sharpen. And that internal memory of patterns when people shift is like really what works. I've gotten far too technical here, or the students' eyes didn't light up when I thought they would. I know that's a moment worth digging into and seeing, like, make the shift, do something right now to make the energy change. When a client keeps repeating the same phrase, that's probably the real insight hiding underneath. It's not magic. It's just awareness stacked on your experience. If you've been in that situation a few times and that client's repeating something, you're going to be like, wow, last time this happened, that was the underlying thing. Maybe I should be listening and pivoting to exactly what they're talking about. When I'm teaching, I can tell 5 minutes into a lecture whether I need to speed up, slow down, or throw the slides out altogether. There was a time just a few weeks ago where there was an article in my mind that I had read, and I had slides ready to go, talking about something totally different. And I just realized that it wasn't going in the right direction. And I threw out some of the insight I'd learned from this article, and it blew the minds of the kids. It was a little scaring too, because it was like talking about the future and what's ahead, and this idea of like last week's topic, which was like the junior level position kind of going away. I just pivoted and I'm like, let's talk about that, because I could tell their ears perked up, their eyes opened, and their conversation back and the debate we had was just so positive. And again, it was just knowing that wasn't the right time. Same thing goes for a client meeting, or sometimes I'll walk in with a full deck and a whiteboard ready to go for the next few hours. And because that's exactly what that moment needs. You know, you come in with all those things. I love bringing in those easel back kind of big pads of paper that you can kind of post all over the room. But here's the crazy part. People remember those moments, the times when you went off script and you met them where they are. So many times that has happened, and I took the lead from somebody more senior in the room, and that was my learning moment. I was like, I saw how they just pivoted because it wasn't going the right way. And all those plans and all the boards and the big, 32-page deck we had was not going to work for that situation. And that's what connection looks like in the creative world. It's not perfection, it's presence. It was observing, it's being there, it's learning from the folks and the mentors ahead of you. Presence takes practice. It can't be learned overnight. You got to see the result, and you've got to see the positive change in someone when they've made that shift. And it really does create a much better situation. So the next time that you're in one of those rooms, whether it's a classroom, a boardroom, a client on Zoom, stop for a second and pay attention. Notice that there's rhythm. Who's the one leaning in? Who's disengaged? Is the energy building or is it stalling? The more you train yourself to notice, the faster your intuition will develop, because you're in that moment, and it's a do or die situation. And the more you get there, the faster you get there. I think your intuition really plays a part in that seamless transition from blueprint to the complete breakpoint that you're going to do. What separates good creatives from great ones isn't talent or tools. It's emotional range. It's the ability to see, sense, and respond without overthinking. You're not just managing a project, you're managing the momentum and that speed and the velocity of what's happening right in front of you. That's what reading the room really is. It's tuning awareness into action. Here's a mini takeaway. Structure builds trust. Spontaneity builds connection. You need both to lead creativity for sure. This balance between structure and spontaneity isn't luck. It's a skill, and you can practice it. And here's what's worked for me. And I know when I teach and I have my students, and maybe it's even just a client, or maybe it's just peers. Prep deep, perform loose. Love that. This is where you earn your freedom through preparation. So when you've done the work and you can walk into any room with that confidence because your foundation is pretty solid, the deeper your preparation is, the looser your performance can feel. That's how you create space for the organic, the human moments, the ones that make the whole thing memorable. Number 2, build flexible frameworks. Whether you're presenting or designing, you're building systems that blend, not break. So when I'm mapping out a case study or a workshop or anything that I'm doing, I design a few pivot points, places where I can adjust based on freedom, feedback, or that energy in the room that we talked about. The structure is still strong, but it can swing open in any direction when it needs to. The best systems don't look rigid on paper, but they move fluidly in the practice that you're going to do. Number 3, read, respond, and rebuild. When something shifts mid-project, mid-presentation, don't react, just read. Ask yourselves what's really happening. And if you just ask that quickly in your mind, that'll give you a bit of a roadmap to know how to respond, but not just to how to respond, but how to respond with intention. Because I want to make sure it's a smart move. I don't want to make sure just because I've identified a pause or a moment to switch, I'm choosing the wrong way. I might as well have just stayed on that path. But you want to know how to do it with that intention, because afterwards you can rebuild it and you can kind of bring it back to where it needs to be. Reflect on what has worked already, what didn't, and why. And that's how you build that instinct, and you can get sharper each time that you do it. Number 4 is you want to reflect after the storm. So after every big talk, every big project, any presentation I have with the client, I always ask myself 3 things. Number 1, where did I stay on script and did it work? Number 2, where did I go off script and why? 3, what felt alive in the room? That reflection is where all of your mastery will start. Flexibility isn't the opposite of structure. It's the reward of mastering it. And the more you do, the more flexible you're going to be able to pivot and let those breakpoints truly be to your full advantage. So what did Adobe MAX really teach me this year? Well, that creativity doesn't live in perfection. this also goes for the entire event. I went in thinking I brought 3 cameras. I was going to film and record. I was going to capture things. I was going to interview people. I did interview some people. They'll be showing up on the podcast in an episode soon. But I went in with so much, and where I pivoted was I just didn't have the time, and I wanted to absorb it all for real. I didn't record much. I didn't take a lot of pictures. I felt terrible that I didn't get a chance to hang with a few people that I really did want to kind of spend time with. So, the reality of it is sometimes you just kind of have to go with that. There was no pivot in those situations for me. So I learned that as well. The creativity doesn't live in the perfection, like we said. It lives in those spaces between precision and play, and between confidence and curiosity. Because all these things are so polar opposite, but they do work together to allow you to have the best possible performance or experience when it comes to these things. You need both sides of this to do great work. The blueprints will give you focus, they anchor you, they protect your sanity. I know that's how it works for me. And they're what let you walk into that chaos and know that you can handle it. But the breakpoints, though, that's where the growth happens, man. That's the spot where you can just let go, trust your instincts, and let something real come through. The most confident creatives that I know prep like professionals and improvise like artists. They design, they teach, and lead between the lines, because that's where you've learned that control and chaos aren't enemies. They're truly partners in what you're going to be doing. Max reminded me that I'm still learning that balance too. That sometimes the best creative moments aren't the ones we plan. They're the ones that sneak up on your ass, and they're where you finally loosen your grip. So whether you're standing on a stage, behind a screen, presenting to a client, or across from a client on the other side of the table, remember this: structure builds trust, spontaneity builds connection, and that magic happens when you learn to weave the two together. It's amazing to see how that worked, and I had to make sure I put this together because it was so top of mind over these last few days. I'm endlessly grateful to the friends and family at Adobe who had me come and speak, had me be a part of sharing this situation, experiencing everything, and being such a part of an inspiring event with so many other people that I look up to and love to chat with. One thing that keeps me going is this idea and the love of our community and our industry. So thanks for listening, guys. Go out there and make something beautiful and make a mess a little bit on purpose the next project you're working on. We'll talk to y'all later. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for watching the Deeply Graphic Design Cast. New episodes every week? Well, most weeks. Be sure to follow and subscribe so you never miss the latest. Now shut this off and go design some damn magic.